Good afternoon, everybody. It's Lorraine, Alternative Homesteading, on June 9, 2026 in the afternoon. It's been raining all day. And yes, I've been absent for a couple of days because I'm really busy here. Everything takes longer in the rain. And also, you know, the criminals, not only do they steal items from me, but they steal my time. They steal my time by utilizing radio frequencies to make me feel drowsy when I'm not tired, prevent me from falling asleep when I am tired, and all kinds of other things. But I want to show you how these criminals are able to get around on my property. Let me just... I've noticed on one of the cameras in my kitchen that faces outward towards the chicken coop and my shed. At first I thought, you know, it's like really unusual the way that particular camera is never capturing anything, and how there's this big pink rectangular shape over my shed. Excuse me, over my shed. Now, at first I thought it was a lot of glare because of the sun, but that didn't seem right. And today we have no sun at all. There's no sun at all. And I still have this big pink blacked out, or I shouldn't say pinked out portion of my shed, which is obviously intentional by the criminals. They have done this have utilized this technique when I lived at 52 Sutton Drive in Alpha, New Jersey, a home I lived in for 30 years as original owner. And what they would do is I would walk outside and they would ghost me. So as I would be walking down my driveway, you would see like my back legs start ghosting. Lots of repetition of my legs, my movements, to make it virtually impossible to see the details. So what these criminals are doing, and you'll see by this photo image that I sent to my email, I believe that this blocked out pink section of my shed is where the frogger hangs out, the cloaked person. So this camera is from my kitchen, pointing outward, and you can see that the chicken coop to the right is very clear. You can clearly see there's no sun out today. There's absolutely no reason for there to be glare or anything there, but this is daily. I've noticed on my cameras it's daily, whether it's sunny, whether it's dusk, whether it's cloudy, whether it's raining. So evidently this is where the criminal is hanging out on my property, which makes them leapfrog. They can leapfrog from there to my chicken coop, and every once in a while that chicken coop is also pinked out, and they could be hiding out there, which is why my chickens and guineas start freaking out, and I'll go outside, I don't see anything. This is how they can go inside the coop and filthy it up when I'm in my house and not watching. And this is how they could be hiding when they're jumping, when they're leapfrogging from building to building onto my porch. So I want you to see that, and I'm going to see if I can increase this a little bit so that you can see it better. You see that? That's every day. And it's raining today. And you could see here, the chicken coop is perfectly clear. You could even see like a rooster here. You can see my chairs here. This is a shed. And you see how they pink it out? They've completely blocked it out here. So that's how they're getting around on my property during the day. So we're just outing them, and how they're interfering with my cameras too. And this beautiful mixed media art is by Creative Sirens on eBay. So the topic for today is one of it's a tactic that's utilized by these creepers, these stalkers, the gang stalkers, the organized harassment criminals, by the military, by animals. It's called swarming. Okay, so swarming is a tactic. It's a mob mentality. There's something called drone swarms in the military. Right? This is a method that is, it's sort of like street theater. It's sort of like a convoy. It's premeditated, it's coordinated, it's timed, it's synchronous, and it's about reproduction. Okay, so I pulled up a couple of definitions for swarming. So swarming, as it relates to the military, is a battlefield tactic designed to maximize target saturation and thereby overwhelm or saturate the defenses of the principal target or objective. Defenders can overcome the attempts at swarming by launching counter swarming measures. They're designed to neutralize or otherwise repel such tactics. And I'm sure when you think about swarms, you're thinking about bees, a bunch of bees or a bunch of ants. They're swarms. I don't know about you guys, but when I encounter a swarm of insects, I just douse them with food-grade diatomaceous earth, and they don't have a chance. So military swarming is encountered as in asymmetric warfare where opposing forces, that's you and me, where opposing forces are not of the same size or capacity. So it's one of us against a swarm of them. So in such situations, swarming involves the use of decentralized force against an opponent, you and me, in a manner that emphasizes mobility, communication, unit autonomy, and coordination or synchronization. So in order for it to be coordinated and synchronized and engage in communication, right, it's premeditated. Okay, so get that all through your little brains there. Everybody, it's premeditated. What they're doing is organized. The swarming, historically, the military forces have used these principles of swarming without really examining them explicitly, but there's active research in consciously examining the military doctrines that drew the ideas from swarming. How do they do this? This is what the military does. And this is where they get their camouflage from, their invisibility suits. What do? They watch animals that camouflage themselves in nature. And how do they do that? They capture all of the animals, torture them in experiments, right? Inject them with things, isolate them from their natural surroundings, the way they do with targeted individuals. But that's what they do. So they study animals who naturally camouflage themselves in the ocean. How the military is able to hide behind trees. You think that they learn that on their own? Oh no, they're copying animals. They're mimicking animals, and just the way swarming, they're mimicking what happens naturally in the animal world, in the environment. So, they drew the ideas from nature and non-military situations where other various forms of swarming. Biologically driven forms are often complex adaptive systems. They don't have any planning. They just are. That's these animals, inherently have this behavior to protect themselves from predators. But actually the military, what they do is they're deriving the biology from these animals who do it to protect themselves. They do it to cause harm to other people, to targeted people. Yeah, so these military operations, they're strategic and they're tactical. There's usually an expert group evaluating the swarming's role. in the revolution of military affairs and force transformation. They observe that military swarming is primarily tactical, sometimes operational and rarely strategic, and is a complement to other efforts rather than replacement for them. Swarming is a logical extension of network-centric warfare. Okay, it's a warfare. Now we're going to go to some documents that I downloaded specifically, so that was from Wikipedia, about swarming. Okay, so this is a swarm tactics brochure. Real-time coordination through technology. Swarm tactics are greatly enhanced by technology, particularly utilizing smartphones, GPS, and real-time communication platforms. They deputize America's swarm response system. This is trademarked. It's a crowd-sourcing public safety system that uses a mobile app to allow community members to report sightings, share locations, and receive updates on the search efforts. This real-time data sharing creates a dynamic map of activities, allowing for better coordination and resource allocation. For instance, if a sighting is reported, and those criminals drive back and forth and have their hands, their arms hanging out the window with their phones, snapping photos of you. So what it does is they report their sightings, they share the locations, and they receive updates on their search efforts. This real-time data sharing creates a dynamic map of activities, allowing for better coordination and resource allocation. So for instance, if a sighting is reported, like, oh, there she is, I got her, she's cutting her grass, and no, she's pulling weeds, or she's feeding her chickens, we got it on camera. So if a sighting is reported, volunteers in the immediate area can quickly direct to investigate, rather than waiting for traditional law enforcement to arrive. This immediacy can make the difference between a successful rescue and a tragic outcome. I guess you can tell from my voice that I'm being a little sarcastic here. So now this is about empowering the community to protect its own. Swarm tactics inherently empower communities by involving them directly in the protection of their members. So now for Indigenous Nations, this approach aligns with traditional values of communal responsibility and care for one another, and by adopting swarm tactics, tribes, that's another way you can describe these criminals, tribes, flocks, swarms, rather than relying solely on external authorities who may not fully understand the unique challenges and needs of their communities. This empowerment also helps to build trust between the community and the broader public safety system, encouraging greater participation and vigilance. Vigilante justice, right? So now this is preventing future incidents through visibility and deterrence. The very presence of the coordinated, community-driven safety effort can act as a deterrent to those who might harm or abduct women and children. Knowing that any incident will be met with a swift, organized response makes potential criminals less likely to act, except here in Jackson County, Kentucky. Oh, if you want to know about swarming, I wish I would have had my camera present, because I had a swarm, a convoy of stalkers that lasted pretty much 40 minutes yesterday. Yeah. They were just driving by, all colors, black and white and, whatever color cars they were, driving by. And even the realtor that I was meeting with was like, those are expensive vehicles. I said, yeah, aren't they? Yeah, they are expensive vehicles. And look at all those blacked out windows. And I said to her, I said, you know, I experience this every time I walk out my front door. I said, those are the stalkers in the community that are harassing me. They're preventing me from selling my property. So don't be surprised if you receive a phone call from one of those criminals pretending to be a public authority to not sell my property. Do not be surprised. So suspicious activity is more likely to be noticed and reported before it escalates. Like yesterday, extremely suspicious activity driving back and forth on the county road. It was non-stop. This proactive deterrence is a powerful tool in reducing the number of missing person cases. So now the conclusion to this flyer is by implementing Deputize America's swarm response system, trademark, within a crowdsourcing public safety framework, Indigenous Nations will enhance their ability to protect their most vulnerable members, women and children. This approach leverages the power of community, local knowledge, and technology to create a responsive, efficient, and empowering system for safety, and as a result, fewer women and children will go missing. Cough, cough. Yeah, right. And those who do can be found and rescued more quickly, ensuring that these communities are safer and more secure. So now, you know, DARPA, we can't leave out DARPA. DARPA has something called an offset. Offensive. OFF. Ensive. Swarm-enabled tactics. DARPA's offensive swarm-enabled tactics offset program envisions future small unit infantry forces using swarms comprising upwards of 250 small unmanned aircraft systems, UAS, and or small unmanned ground systems, UGS, to accomplish diverse missions in complex urban environments. By leveraging and combining emerging technologies in swarm autonomy and human swarm teaming, the program seeks to enable rapid development and deployment of breakthrough capabilities. And the program is now complete, actually. It's complete. So Offset aims to provide the tools of quick generate swarm tactics and evaluate those swarm tactics for effectiveness and integrate the best swarm tactics into field operations. To accomplish these goals, Offset will develop an active swarm tactics development ecosystem and supporting open systems architecture, including, but not limited to, an advanced human swarm interface to enable users to monitor and direct potentially hundreds of unmanned platforms simultaneously in real time. I wonder if some of those swarms are robotic insects, robotic birds, robotic bats. Inquiring minds want to know. The program intends to leverage rapidly emerging, immersive, and intuitive. Leave it to DARPA to add intuition into their technology. Augmented and virtual reality, voice, gesture, and touch based to create a novel command interface with immersive situational awareness and decision presentation capabilities. I want to meet the individual that crafts the language for these advertisements here, talking about their technology. I want to meet this person. It's got to be some lawyer, right? It's got to be some technical scientist collaborating with some attorney. The interface would also incorporate a swarm interaction. Oh, here you go. Grammar. enabling freestyle design and swarm tactics that allow dynamic action and reaction based on real-time conditions. Where? In the field. A real-time network virtual environment that would support physics-based swarm tactics game. A game! A swarm tactics game. And in the game, players would use the interface to rapidly explore, evolve, and evaluate swarm tactics to see which would potentially work best. Whether using various unmanned systems in the real world or exploring innovative synthetic technologies in the virtual one, users could submit swarm tactics and track their performance from test rounds on a leaderboard and encourage competition and collaboration. Community-driven swarm tactics exchange. This would be curated. It would be a limited access program portal, and it would house tools to help the participants design swarm tactics by composing collective behaviors, swarm algorithms, and even other existing tactics. It would provide these key ingredients to an extensible architecture for end-user generated swarm tactics and help create a lasting community to innovate and cultivate the most effective tactics with the potential to integrate third-party tactics and future users. It's going to get even better, folks. Offset is structured to demonstrate its technologies through frequent live experiments with various unmanned air and ground platforms. I'll just repeat that in case you didn't hear that. Offset is structured to demonstrate its technologies through frequent live experiments with various unmanned air and ground platforms. That could be drones, birds, swarms, insects. Roughly every 6 months, operational vignettes of progressively increasing complexity would challenge both the swarm architecture and develop swarm tactics across numerous technological and operational test variables, such as the swarm size, the spatial scale of operations, and the mission duration. Every 6 months. That means, I'm just going to take a wild guess that they're going to be reapplying for grants for these special offset technologies, these live experiments with unmanned air and ground platforms. They're probably going to be applying for grants every 6 months. Users would employ the swarm interface to test the best of the virtual tactics in the real world and interactively supply their unmanned platforms with near real-time tactic updates using automated deployment technologies. So I'm going to put that in plain language, okay? So these little swarms, these little dronies, the little drones, the little birds, the little insects that have little cameras, you know. So the tactics, they're going to be updated. These new tactics, they're going to be boots on the ground, your criminals on patrol. These are good. The tactics are going to be updated and uploaded to the virtual tactics. The virtual tactics in the real world are going to be uploaded to the swarm interface every 6 months. And the way they're going to do this is they're going to increase the complexity so that they can develop different swarm tactics across numerous technological and operational test variables. Swarm size, spatial scale operations, the number of perpetrators, boots on the ground, the number of targeted people, the age of targeted people, utilizing their pets, their property, piggybacking on your electricity, draining your car battery after you've have it rebooted. So to employ various boots on the ground criminals on patrol activities and upload it. So some swarming behavior, this is collective behavior exhibited by entities. Now let's get to how swarming was actually first studied, okay? And again, the military doesn't come up with any ideas of their own. They receive all of their ideas from what's going on in the nature. They observe it, and from you, targeted people out there, all the empaths out there, because, these are psychopaths. They are trained to hate women. They are trained to be dismissive. They are trained to play games. They are trained, they are mind-controlled specimens from the time they are employed in the military. So what they do is the military always observes what's going on in nature and then snatches it, brings it into their lab with all their scientists, all the experiments that you don't know about, that we learn about 30 years later. All those mermaids that are running around, swimming around in the sea, Bigfoot, all these creatures that have been interbred just to see what happens. These are psychopaths. Okay, so they first studied the collective behavior, animals of similar size which aggregate together. They kind of mill around the same spot. They move on en masse. They migrate in some direction. And it's highly interdisciplinary. So this is what animals do. But animals do it for a reason. They do it. They flock together for safety. They flock together to prevent predators. They flock together to search for food. So swarming as applied to insects, it can also be applied to any other entity that an animal exhibits a swarm behavior. Like the term flock, the flock cameras. Well, we're all deflocking those cameras, but the term flocking or murmuration can refer specifically to a swarm of behavior in birds. And herding refers to a swarm of behavior in tetrapods. And shoaling or schooling refers to swarm behavior in fish. And phytoplankton gather together in huge swarms called blooms. And these organizations are called algae. By extension, the term swarm is applied to also inanimate entities, which are exhibited parallel behaviors like in a robot swarm, an earthquake swarm, or a star swarm. So all of these swarms that are exhibited naturally in nature, these ideas, they're stolen by the psychopaths, the criminals on patrol. They're stolen by the military because these people don't think for themselves. They can't. They would not be psychopaths if they could think for themselves. They're not creative. They cannot create for themselves, so they steal all the ideas from other people. This is why they offer research scientists. This is why you're targeted. So abstractly, the swarm behavior is a collective motion of a large number of self-propelled entities. Okay, so these could be individuals. They're centrally coordinated. What about troops? Right, troops, would you consider a troop to be a swarm? They're swarms. So as far as gang stalking, organized harassment, vigilante stalking for targeted individuals, people placed on a blacklist, watch list, swarming is a very proficient tactic utilized. It's the mob mentality. They are the stalkers. Drone swarms, the military uses it. It's your street theater. It's premeditated. It's coordinated. It's timed. It's synchronous. And just as an FYI, today is a fairly good day, aside from the fact that it's raining. Venus and Venus, the planet of love, beauty, attraction, money, finances, is in alignment. They're sharing to the same degree as Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And Jupiter is the planet of abundance. And just remember, Jupiter has a lot of moons. Like a lot of moons. So Jupiter is like, how do I phrase this? Jupiter is the usually the bachelor of the zodiac. But moons is symbolic of women. So, you know, Jupiter usually has a lot of women around him. But Venus and Jupiter together, whatever Jupiter touches expands the nature of. And Venus-Jupiter means that this is a very good day. It could be very joyful. It could be very fortunate. It could be good luck. Money, fortune comes your way. And, you know, just remember, for all those people that say, oh, but that's astrology. Oh, but what are you talking about? You know, oh, that goes against God. Excuse me. The planets and the stars existed long before the Bible. Just saying. I'm not a Bible person, by the way. I appreciate all the Bible quotes that you give me because I'm learning. I did not grow up with the Bible in the house. I'm not a religious person. I can think for myself. I don't need the religious warm behavior of the fake prophets, you know, like the hypocrites, like here in Jackson County, Kentucky. You know, people that drive around with a license plate that says blessed, and they're throwing poopy diapers in front of your mailbox and throwing trash and screaming at the top of their lungs and threatening your workers. That to me is hypocritical behavior. That's not godlike. That's Luciferian, satanic, loser-like. So, but today's a good day. And so within the next couple of days, it's going to be meeting up with the planet of communications, Mercury, and approaching the crescent moon. And when the moon increases in light, stuff happens. All the birds and the bees and all the criminals, they come out of the shadows because it gets lighter outside. Yes, the animals become active. And the crescent moon is great for activity. So anybody here, Venus, Jupiter today, today's a good day to get some stuff done. Swarming is a gang stalking tactic.